right, here we go with the continuing saga series based on Common Sense Renewed. The Georgia Guidestones by Robert Christian, right? This is on chapter 9. Rather short one on revolution, so this time around we'll listen to all this crap this guy's got to spew, or they have to spew, who knows. All right. He starts lovingly with this epigraph from Pascal, from Pensées on a Foundation for Ordering the World. And here it is. On what shall man found the order of the world which he would govern? Shall it be on justice? Man is ignorant of it. Certainly had he known it, we would have seen it set up in all the states on earth and in all times. The art of opposition and of revolution is to unsettle established customs, sounding them even to their source, to point out their want of authority and justice. Okay, so what is it like? Yeah, here's the other thing. Well, I mean, that's why I always offer these subtitles like, Common Sense Renewed, killing me softly with green talk. Okay, so we're useless. The flow of time is associated with endless change in all matter and energy throughout the cosmos. Where life is present, the pace of change is vastly increased. We humans undergo continuous remodeling in mind and body. We are born, we grow, we mature, age, and die. Do I need this guy to point this out to me? Oh, well, this sets up all the warm and fuzzy stuff, and then he hits you with a sledgehammer, in the last 3 paragraphs. Our bodies begin as dust and water. All right. After a brief span of perhaps 70 Earth years, we revert again to our elemental beginnings. Our lives are animated by a vital flame transmitted to us through an unbroken sequence of generations which can be traced back to a spark struck over 2 billion years ago on this planet. Right. Our life flame is shared with myriad other forms, which have evolved with us over the eons as powers of the infinite have become apparent in the revelations of nature. We alone on Earth have been gifted with brains that provide perception and reason sufficient to recognize, at least dimly, the ultimate majesty of a Supreme Being reflected in these manifestations. Supreme Being, okay, what would that be? Is that a burger at Wendy's? We are beginning to understand our potential for guiding future evolution in a conscious and integrated fashion. Right. Today our species continues a long pattern of strife and warfare. Divisive forces within us overpower other impulses which might unite all of humanity in considered opposition to ignorance, misery, and discord. We are endowed with accumulations of knowledge and error inherited from the past. We often confuse one with the other and interpret reality in contrary ways. The human family remains divided by multitudes of differences. Our world society is a seething cauldron of conflicts, bustle, and motion. Yet our daily affairs require a degree of order. Social structures and codes of behavior must undergo periodic modification in order to meet changing needs within the body politic. History suggests that these changes occur by fits and starts. An established social pattern or government tends to remain stable for extended periods, coasting along on the inertial tendencies of its component laws, customs, and institutions. Gradually accumulating stresses ultimately force adaptive changes. We are creatures of habit. We often tolerate outmoded life patterns to avoid the discomfort attendant upon adopting new ones. Ultimately, our societies must demonstrate sufficient adaptability to meet major changes in the conditions of life. Governments and other social organizations which exist today have demonstrated that level of flexibility in the past, or they would not have survived to the present point in history. Today, all governments in the family of nations face widespread change brought about by an explosion in human numbers, right, and human technology of a magnitude never before encountered. Existing social and political structures must meet the challenges of the next century. Those which most effectively combine wisdom, strength, and determination will play guiding roles in bringing our species into the future. Threats to social stability take many forms. Some are internal and relate to increasing literacy, to altered economic circumstances, and to evolutionary changes in the social order. Other destabilizing forces arise from changes in the political, economic, or military activities of neighboring states. Major acquisitions of knowledge unsettle many traditional beliefs. Both historical records and a view of the present world picture reveal a variety of successful patterns of government. They cover a spectrum from absolute dictatorships to complete democracies. Control of the affairs of a state resides in a coalition of power centers. These may be apparent and straightforward. or partially concealed and disguised. In an absolute monarchy, authority resides, at least in the theory, in a monarch. But that authority may be dependent upon support by lesser nobles and ministers of government. Ultimately, it requires continuing acceptance by the populace. A similar situation exists in nations ruled by dictators, and sometimes on a smaller scale, in a tribe or even in a family. Custom and asserted power may spawn an assortment of patterns of what may be termed authoritative rule. At the opposite extreme, societies may be democratic, with each citizen, at least in theory, having co-equal status with all others. Certain city-states in ancient Greece functioned under conditions which permitted major state decisions to be reached in assemblies of all the citizens, even though they may have numbered upward of 30,000. Our American institutions are democratic in principle, but republican in practice. We delegate legislative functions to officials elected by the common people. Communistic societies are nearer the authoritarian end of the spectrum. They are ruled by a single party, which is self-perpetuating and elitist. And so, like, what's different here? Oh, that's right, we have two parties. Damn, I keep forgetting that. Membership is offered selectively to citizens who meet criteria established by the party leadership. Yes, that you be a freaking snitch and devote your soul, in essence, to the state. All right, conformity to party discipline is rigidly enforced. I said that. Debate within the party must be carefully structured to avoid challenging established leaders and hollow doctrines. Democracies have a stability of sorts, which flows from the ability of the population to achieve changes in the social structure through open elections. That's bullcrap. Demands for reform, you know what elections are for, so you don't go ahead with pitchforks and overthrow the government. Demands for reform or for new government policies do not accumulate to disruptive levels when the safety valve of the ballot box is available at regular intervals. Yeah, let them go vote and they'll just blow off their steam. Communist societies have stability of another sort, with concentrations of economic, police, and military power under the control of the ruling coalition. And how's that different from us? Okay. By skillfully directing the flow of information and by anticipating to reasonable degrees the physical and intellectual needs of the populace, such governments can survive for long intervals. They enjoy certain advantages of leadership if they have the wisdom and the will to use them. Wise leaders can sometimes foresee future needs which require stern anticipatory measures. If they demonstrate by their actions an apparent devotion to the service of their citizens, they usually maintain themselves in power. In democratic societies, it is sometimes difficult for leaders to require sacrifice from citizens who are beguiled by other candidates for office who through ignorance or mere ambition promise unlimited benefits from the public treasury. It is difficult for leaders in democratic societies to seek changes in traditional attitudes which may have been made desirable by alterations in the human condition. Revolutions are social upheavals in which an entrenched combination of power centers is forcefully deposed by new coalitions favoring doctrines of a radically different nature. Revolutions may occur in all societies, although they may come about in different manners, violent or otherwise. When social evolution has produced change to a level beyond the adaptive power of an existing government, the stage is set for overthrow of the old order by new coalitions of power, which offer promise of adapting society to its altered circumstances. A justified revolution is one which arises after there has developed a marked disparity between the asserted right to rule of an established government and the combined political wills of its citizens. To be justified, a revolution must achieve in actual fact a better representation of the political will of its people than was provided by the deposed system. A revolution that is simply a violent overthrow of one set of self-serving rulers by another is no more than a coup. Occasionally, even a coup can be considered justified if it results in replacing a tyrant with more moderate rulers who better serve the needs of the people. None of these rulers serve the needs of the people. Just old crap out and new crap in. Regimes installed through intrigue and violence are subject to overthrow in like manner. Democratic societies are less inclined to take over by factions because of their feedback mechanisms which maintain a degree of conformity between the will of the people and the actions of government. Democracy is fragile, even when the electorate is composed of literate and reasonably informed citizens. When the people are uneducated and illiterate, democracies are extremely vulnerable to take over by militants who achieve control of the police, the military, and public information sources. Yes, they would be called corporations. Skillful conspirators may seize power, suppress the populace, and use the resources of an entire nation to pursue their own selected goals, even in a culturally advanced nation, like the U.S. Okay. This occurred in Germany when Adolf Hitler seized power. It occurred in different circumstances in Russia when followers of Marx, under the guidance of Lenin, gained absolute control of the largest nation on earth by seizing the reins of power from the poorly organized leaders of an earlier revolution, which had deposed the Tsar. Revolutions may be bloodless, or they may be terribly destructive of life and social institutions. They may improve the lot of nations or plunge them into conditions worse than those which gave them birth. Today, the entire world is concerned with an ideological struggle between two general philosophies. On the left of the spectrum are communist societies, theocracies, and dictatorships, which contend that the affairs of mankind are too complex for citizen control. These systems function under the guidance of elite ruling groups. Right. What government doesn't, by the way? All right, here we go. In communist nations, this is the party. In Iran today, it is a religious hierarchy. In other societies, it may be a dictatorship or a rule by a military junta supported by influential groups in the civilian sector, all of which, by the way, are controlled by the same elites, no matter if they're Khomeinis or whatever they are. And remember, this was written in 85, so when somebody Iran, it's Iran in 85. After the Ayatollah overthrew the Shah, Pahlavi. In such societies, individual rights are curtailed. Political and economic activities are controlled, at least to some degree, by the central authority. Freedom of discussion and dissent are often non-existent. Personal liberties are severely curtailed in these authoritarian societies, whether they be communist, capitalist, religious, or otherwise. On the right end of the scale are the democracies or quasi-democracies which attempt to function with elected officials while preserving freedom for all but the most flagrantly disruptive political activities. All right. Neither of these general types of government has succeeded in devising mechanisms which so clearly demonstrate superiority that all human beings everywhere flock willingly to its banner. No major power except China has indicated an awareness of the problems of overpopulation. No nation has proposed programs which will bring the entire world family into a perpetual balance with nature. And what would that be? No nation or alliance has proposed acceptable programs for freeing international commerce, maintaining universal peace, and establishing a stable world order in which there is no armed conflict, and in which individual nations are free to experiment with trials of new systems for self-rule and economic development. But you guys have got the world government on its way, and that's exactly how it should be defined. Instead, the major powers remain concerned primarily with their rivalries and with endless expansions of military forces. Right. Bleeding their societies and diverting attention and resources which might otherwise be serving the peaceful needs of all mankind. The communist leadership remains committed to outmoded ideological concepts propounded by Marx and Lenin. Neither one of these guys came up with this stuff. Again, this is, Marxism is nothing but a banker's document. Marx, I don't think so. You know what I mean? Charlie Brown would have a better chance of writing what Marx did. I mean, just somebody who wrote it down, didn't come up with it. They affixed it to him. And this is another way that everybody gets pissed off at the Jews. Another canard. They continue to make private capitalism a scapegoat for all the world's problems, ignoring the real contributions to human life which have been made possible by reasonably regulated capitalistic agencies, coupled with prudent taxes on profits, property, income, and inheritances, and here's the four basic food groups. I mean, don't you love it? Don't you love it? I mean, he makes a statement that capitalism is a scapegoat for all the world's problems. Well, of course they made capitalism and socialism and communism, but especially capitalism, to look brutal and very unequal and unfair, so that we'll get rid of capitalism. And then it cracks me up, ignoring the real contributions to human life which have been made possible by reasonably regulated capitalistic agencies. Coupled with, what was that? Regulated capitalistic agencies? Coupled with prudent taxes on profits, property, income, and inheritances. Well, there's four your planks of the Communist Manifesto. Enlightened people today recognize that humanity can adapt to widely divergent economic and social systems in different circumstances and in different times. It is possible for all to coexist peacefully if nations will only determine collectively that peace must be preserved. World problems of population control, economic development, education, and the pursuit of justice and happiness can be dealt with in an infinite variety of ways. But you guys are only going to use one. That's called totalitarianism. And it's coming to a neighborhood theater near you. We are in need of world revolution, but it must not be one of force and violence. It must be a revolution of human attitude, in italicized letters. A revolution that will outlaw the abominations of war, replacing it with judicial means for solving international frictions, with decisions enforced by a representative coalition, perhaps through a reinvigorated United Nations organization. This is the piece of dung they call the rule of law, where we'll have international law, and guess what? I'm going to figure the defendants never win in this one. And we will have the end of war because we will have complete totalitarianism where any dissent or opposition will be stamped out. That may be peace, but it sure ain't harmony. Here we go. This peaceful revolution can begin with joint actions by dominant members of the world family to prevent the military forces of any nation from crossing the borders of another. No, just let the UN troops go everywhere. Similar joint efforts can ensure all nations the free exchange of goods and information throughout the world. No one knows which way human institutions will evolve in future ages. There is strength and hope in diversity, exploring many pathways and efforts to achieve our maximum potentials. Sensible people in all nations realize that an atomic war is unthinkable as a conscious policy for any nation. No, it will be for the world government, though. It would be suicidal and universally destructive, and that's exactly what they want. And lastly, it is time for a new generation of leadership in America, Russia, China, and all the nations of the earth to join in cooperative efforts to establish lasting world peace. Achieving this goal, in italicized letters, will constitute the final revolution in world thought, which will establish an age of reason. Now, once again, this has been Chapter 9 on revolution from that wonderful book, Common Sense Renewed, the Georgia Guidestones by Robert Christian. And we will continue this next week. Thanks very much for listening to Common Sense Renewed.